Bantu-speaking farmers began migrating south from Central Africa, bringing iron, agriculture, and cattle. This migration eventually formed the major ethnic groups we know today: the Xhosa, the Zulu, and the Sotho. For centuries,
Why this hole controls South Africa? Let's go ahead and check this out, guys.
South Africa is the economic giant of the African continent. It has gold, diamonds, and borders two massive oceans. But it also has a fatal flaw. The country is drying out, and the only thing keeping its industrial heart from total collapse is this small, independent hole in the map. So why can't South Africa and its largest city, Johannesburg, survive without this tiny country? I'm Jeff, and this is the geographic story of South Africa.
Hold on, fam. I know he's not about to tell us what I think he's about to tell us, bruh. If this is about water, and this is a real deal, bruh. Like, this is real because I've experienced it. Hold on, let's just see what he has to say, bruh.
And the tiny enclave country of Lesotho. This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Shout out Squarespace. But
on the surface, South Africa looks like a geographic titan. It's a massive country encompassing over 1.2 million square kilometers at the very tip of the African continent. In fact, it's the 25th largest country on the planet, dominating the southern hemisphere with a coastline that stretches more than 2,800 kilometers, creating the rare geographic privilege of bordering two massive oceans: the freezing Atlantic to the west and the warm Indian Ocean to the east. When you traverse South Africa, you're met with an almost confusing array of biomes.
Such a beautiful place, y'all.
You have the lush, subtropical humidity of the...
Hold on, that's Namibia though, isn't it? This right here is Namibia, if I'm not mistaken. Or I might be wrong because I don't know. But I know Namibia has where there's a desert and then the ocean. The desert meets the ocean.
KwaZulu-Natal in the east, and the stark, sun-baked deserts of the Kalahari in the north. You have the Mediterranean climate of Cape Town, famous for its vineyards, contrasting sharply with the semi-arid, flat scrublands of the Great Karoo that fills the vast interior. It's a land of abundance in minerals, gold, and, of course, biodiversity. But there is one specific resource that South Africa is desperately lacking. And to find it, you have to look away from the oceans and towards the center of the country, where a strange, mountain-locked anomaly sits. This is the Great Escarpment, a massive geologic formation that separates the narrow coastal margins of South Africa from its high inland plateau. And right at the most dramatic, violent section of this escarpment, the Dragon Mountains, sits a country that shouldn't geographically exist as a separate entity. This is Lesotho. Lesotho is an oddity in the world of geography. It's one of only 3 distinct enclave countries in the world, countries entirely surrounded by one other country. But while San Marino and Vatican City are essentially city-states in Italy, Lesotho is a rugged, wild fortress of a country. And it's much bigger. Roughly the size of Belgium or the US state of Maryland, Lesotho creates a huge hole in the map of South Africa. But it isn't a hole in the ground. It's actually the opposite. Lesotho is the only independent state in the world that lies entirely above 1,000 meters in elevation. This means that its lowest point is higher than the lowest point of any other country on Earth, earning it the nickname, the Kingdom in the Sky. While South Africa is defined by its vast, sprawling plateaus and coastal plains, Lesotho is defined by its verticality. It's a land of basalt peaks and deep valleys formed by millions of years of volcanic activity.
Bro, that just made me think of the Black Panther. You know the people that were in the sky. I know that the people who wore but they weren't the same ones. Baku, y'all remember Baku? But he was like high in the sky and it was cold. Why wouldn't that representation just reminds me of Lesotho so much because they were high in the sky. They always used the upper, to their advantage and stuff like that. I don't know, man.
Erosion. This elevation difference is not just a piece of trivia, it's the engine of the entire region's climate. As moisture-laden air blows from the warm Indian Ocean, it travels over the South African lowlands. As it hits the sheer rock wall of the Dragon and Maloti Mountains, which form the border and spine of Lesotho, that air is forced rapidly upward. It cools and condenses and then falls as massive amounts of rain and snow. This creates a drastic, almost visible line in the dirt. On the South African side of the border, specifically towards the interior and the west, the land is dry. South Africa is actually classified as a water-scarce country, ranking as the 35th driest country in terms of average precipitation. Its rainfall is unpredictable, and the further west you go, the drier it gets, eventually turning into a true desert. But cross the border into the high altitudes of Lesotho, and you enter a water tower. Despite occupying a tiny fraction of the land area of southern Africa, Lesotho receives a disproportionate amount of the region's precipitation. It's lush, cold, and wet. In winter, while the rest of Africa creates images of heat and savanna, Lesotho's peaks are often capped in snow, creating the only natural ski slopes in sub-Saharan Africa. But here's the catch. Water flows downhill, and because Lesotho sits on the literal roof of southern Africa, all that water has to go somewhere. It doesn't stay in Lesotho. It carves deep veins through the rock, converging into streams that eventually form one of the most important geographic features on the continent, the Orange River. This river is the lifeline of the region. It starts high in the Lesotho mountains, catching the snowmelt and heavy rains. It then crosses the border, flowing west across almost the entire width of South Africa. It cuts through the arid heartland, bringing life to the dry Karoo and the southern Kalahari, effectively allowing civilization to exist in places where it logically shouldn't, before finally dumping into the Atlantic Ocean on the Namibian border. So, physically speaking, we have a fascinating geographic relationship. We have South Africa, massive, wealthy in minerals, encircled by oceans, yet parched and drying out from the inside. And then we have Lesotho, small, economically isolated, mountainous, but holding the one thing South Africa can't synthesize, mine, or even buy: a reliable, gravity-fed source of fresh water. This means there will be tensions. But to understand how Lesotho managed to stay off the South African map, we have to go back.
And that's real life, bro. And this is real life because I've experienced it, bro. Bro, I've been 3-4 days, almost weeks without water, bro. Sometimes, bro. Like it's a real problem, bro. It really is an issue.
To the 1800s, to a time when these mountains were the only thing standing between the Basotho people and total annihilation. South Africa can't synthesize what it needs, but luckily, in the digital world, you can. If you're trying to create a unique identity from scratch, the best tool to synthesize your vision into reality is Square international discourse. But those lines that feel so real today were drawn in blood and one of the most brilliant displays of diplomatic survival in history. To understand why Lesotho is an independent country inside South Africa, we have to go back to a time of absolute chaos. For thousands of years, the region was inhabited by the San and Khoi people, hunter-gatherers who roamed the plains. But around 1500 years ago, Bantu-speaking farmers began migrating south from Central Africa, bringing iron, agriculture, and cattle. This migration eventually formed the major ethnic groups we know today: the Xhosa, the Zulu, and the Sotho. For centuries,
Hey!
ago, Bantu-speaking farmers began migrating south from Central Africa, bringing iron, agriculture, and cattle. This migration eventually formed the major ethnic groups we know today: the Xhosa.
The Xhosa, hey y'all, the Xhosa is wild. Xhosa. The Xhosa. I'm about to, hey, the Xhosa.
The Zulu, and the Sotho. For centuries, these groups lived in relative equilibrium. But in the early 1800s, that all changed. A military genius named Shaka Zulu rose to power on the East Coast. He revolutionized warfare in the region, turning the Zulu kingdom into a conquering machine. His expansion triggered what is now known as the Crushing. It was a domino effect of war and displacement. Tribes fleeing the Zulus attacked other tribes, who then fled and attacked others. The interior of South Africa became a killing field of displaced refugees. But in this chaos, one man saw an opportunity. Moshoeshoe I was a minor chief of the Bamokoteli people. He realized that fighting on the open plains against the Zulus was impossible. He needed a defense that didn't rely on numbers, but on geography. So, he gathered his people, along with refugees from shattered tribes across the region, and led them up into the impregnable Maladi Mountains. He established his stronghold on a flat-topped mountain called the Mountain of Night. Legend says the mountain grew taller at night to protect the people sleeping on top. Obviously, that's not true, but it was effective. From this rocky fortress, Moshoeshoe beat back the Zulus and other tribes, uniting the refugees into a single nation, the Basotho. Just as the dust was settling from the Zulu Wars, a new, technologically superior threat arrived from the south: the Boers. The Boers were descendants of Dutch settlers who were trekking inland to escape British rule in the Cape Colony. They were looking for land, and they found the fertile Caledon Valley, the breadbasket of Moshushu's kingdom. Unfortunately, while the Boers had horses and guns, the Basotho only had spears and shields. Seeing this glaring technologic rift, Moshushu quickly acquired guns and horses for his own people, adapting to the new form of warfare. However, the Boer pressure was relentless. They slowly ate away at the arable land at the foot of the mountains, pushing the Basotho higher and higher into the rocks. By the 1860s, the Orange Free State, the country of the Boers, was on the verge of destroying the Basotho kingdom entirely. Moshushu knew he couldn't hold out forever. He needed a shield. And so, in a the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing, he looked to the superpower on the southern coast, the British Empire. Moshushu sent a desperate message to Queen Victoria. He famously asked for her protection, stating that he and his people wished to be under Britain's protection. This decision is the exact moment the map changed forever. The British, wanting to curb the expansion of the independent Boer state, agreed. In 1868, they declared Basutoland a British protectorate. The Boers were furious, but they couldn't fight the British Empire. The border was drawn, largely freezing the conflict lines where they stood. The Boers kept the fertile farmlands they had conquered, which are part of South Africa today, and the Basotho kept the rugged mountains. This is why Lesotho exists. It wasn't a gift, it was a fortress that became a protectorate to survive colonization. Fast forward to 1910, the British Empire decided to unite its various colonies in the region, the Cape, Natal, and the two conquered Boer republics, into a single self-governing dominion, the Union of South Africa. This was the birth of the modern country of South Africa. At the time, everyone, including the British and the South African government, assumed that Basutoland, along with Swaziland and Botswana, would eventually be incorporated into this new union. The South Africa Act of 1909 even had a specific section outlining how this transfer would happen. But the Basotho remembered the Boers. They remembered the land grabs. They fiercely lobbied the British government never to hand them over to the Union of South Africa. The British, perhaps sensing racial tensions rising in South Africa, added a stipulation. The transfer could only happen with the consent of its inhabitants. As the 20th century progressed, South Africa didn't get more inviting, it got terrifying. In 1948, the National Party came to power and formalized apartheid. South Africa became a pariah state, creating a brutal legal framework of racial segregation and oppression. The British could no longer in good conscience hand over its African protectorates to an apartheid regime. And so, the temporary exclusion became permanent. Finally, in 1966, Basutoland gained full independence from Britain, renaming itself the Kingdom of Lesotho. So, here we stand today. We have two sovereign nations. One is a massive economic powerhouse born from a union of British and Boer colonies. The other is a small, mountainous kingdom born from the resistance of Moshushu. But history has a cruel sense of irony. Moshushu saved his people by taking them to the mountains. He secured their political freedom. But in doing so, the Basotho lost their best agricultural land to South Africa. They were left with a country of rock, thin air, and harsh snowy winters. They had their flag, and they had their king,
but I seen a video of these, I don't know how they survive, bruh. Up in the winter, bro, like, it's cold. How much snow they get, and it's just, I'm in the mountains, bro, and you're up in the mountains. Like, the transportation is dang near impossible, bro. Like, it's too much, bro.
No economy. But they did have one very important ace up their sleeve. Water.
I'm telling y'all, that water
To understand the
thing is real,
terrifying
I've
fragility of
experienced
modern South Africa, we have to look at its beating heart and biggest city, Johannesburg. Johannesburg is a geographic freak of nature. It's the largest city in the world that is not built on a coastline, a major lake, or a navigable river. In fact, it sits on a continental divide. When it rains in Johannesburg, the water...
Now that I do think about it, bruh, there is no, like, river. Like, the ocean is very, very far. Bro, like, yeah, the struggles of water make sense. Like, it makes sense.
Runs away from the city, splitting north towards the Indian Ocean and south towards the Atlantic. So why put a megacity of millions of people in a place where water runs away? Gold. When the Witwatersrand Gold Rush kicked off in 1886, no one cared about the long-term sustainability of the city. They just wanted to dig. But as the mining camps turned into skyscrapers, and the dusty tents turned into the province of Gauteng, the economic engine that generates a third of South Africa's GDP, planners hit a wall. They had built the most industrialized center in Africa in a place with no water. For a while, they dammed local streams. Then they sucked the Vaal River dry. But by the mid-20th century, the engineers did the math and realized that if South Africa wanted to keep growing, they needed a new source of water.
Yeah.
And they needed it fast. So they looked at a map and they saw the only option left, Lesotho. This realization birthed one of the most ambitious engineering projects in human history, the Lesotho Highlands Water Project. And this isn't just a pipeline, it's a massive, multi-decade system of dams and tunnels that literally reverses the flow of nature. Here's how it works. Huge dams, like the Katsi and Mohale, capture the heavy rains and snowmelt in the Lesotho mountains. But instead of letting that water flow naturally into the Orange River and go out to the ocean, the project forces it north. Gravity does the heavy lifting. Because Lesotho is so high up, the water rushes through 82 kilometers of tunnels bored through solid rock, crossing under the border and emptying into the Ash River in South Africa. From there, it flows into the Vaal Dam, which acts as the reservoir for Johannesburg and Pretoria. Without this system, the province of Gauteng collapses.
I always wonder, like, where is the water coming from, bruh? Now it totally makes sense. Now I can explain to people who don't know. I'm getting educated over here. I'm getting educated.
Numbers are staggering. Phase 1 of the project already delivers about 780 million cubic meters of water to South Africa every year. Phase 2, which is currently under construction and set to come online around 2028, will ramp that up to over 1.2 billion cubic
Needs that ASAP.
To put that
Needs
in
that
perspective,
ASAP, bro.
Nearly all of the water in Johannesburg comes from a different country. The gold mines that built the economy,
That's insane.
They run on Lesotho water. The coal power plants that keep the lights on, they're cooled by Lesotho water. South Africa essentially outsourced its survival to a neighbor it once tried to conquer. But here's where the story gets dangerous.
The irony in that,
South Africa is drying out. The Department of Water and Sanitation has projected that by 2030, just a few years from now, the country will face a water deficit of 17%. We already saw a preview of this in 2018 when Cape Town faced Day Zero, or the day the taps would run dry. But a Day Zero in Gauteng wouldn't just be a humanitarian crisis, it would be an economic apocalypse for the entire continent. This gives the tiny country of Lesotho an immense amount of leverage. While South Africa surrounds Lesotho militarily and economically, Lesotho has the one thing that everything needs to survive. If the taps in the highlands were to ever be turned off, whether due to political dispute, infrastructural sabotage, or climate change drying up the rains, the heart of South Africa wouldn't exist anymore. This forces the two countries into an unbreakable...
Oh, like literally, bruh. South Africa relies on Lesotho. Lesotho is very important to South Africa. So y'all don't want to mess them ties up, bruh. Y'all do not want to... Any political, anything, y'all better just agree to that ish, bruh. Because once they turn off them reservoir, bruh, it's over. It's over, fam. There's already... I feel like there's not enough water, bro. Because there's been times, bro, where I'm telling you, bro, there's been 3-4 days, no water, bro. No water, fam. And hey, it's not good, bro. It's not good. So I can't imagine if there was any type of conflict and Lesotho said, we turning y'all's water off. Hey.
Embrace. South Africa can't afford for Lesotho to fail, and it also can't afford political instability in Maseru, the capital of Lesotho, that might threaten the dams. It also can't afford to be an enemy.
But the thing is, I feel like the relationship between Lesotho and South Africa is really, really, really great right now. But if what he's saying, you know what I'm saying, if South Africa continues to dry out, it could spark a little conflict if South Africa's like, look, we need more of y'all's water. And if Lesotho's like, you know what I'm saying, we giving y'all as much as we can, hey, South Africa might have to get more aggressive. And then, hey, I don't know. I guess we'll see how that plays out. But maybe the project that they're working on that's coming out in 2028 will be, you know what I'm saying, we'll do some justice with the water, but...
Lesotho. So why can't South Africa survive without Lesotho? Because history and geography played a trick on the region. The British Empire and the Boers drew lines on a map that separated the gold from the water. They built the wealth in the dry lands and left the water in the mountains. Today, those lines are sovereign borders. And as the world gets hotter and fresh water becomes scarcer than gold, the balance of power is shifting. South Africa might have a larger population, bigger economy, and more advanced military. But no matter how powerful South Africa becomes, it will always need to look up at the mountains of Lesotho and worry, will the taps ever run dry? Few countries in the world are as dependent on another country as South Africa is with Lesotho. And typically, this relationship is inversed, where the smaller country is dependent on the larger
bigger
one. But in this case, the geography has dictated that Lesotho holds the true power in the region. This week, I'm spending 36 hours on Amtrak as I ride it all along the western edge of the North American continent from
Hey, that's crazy, guys. Look, let me know what y'all thoughts are, man. How do you guys think this is gonna play out? The relations between the two countries, like I said, is very, very good. You know what I mean? I don't feel like anything crazy. I feel like if anything, they would come to terms and, you know what I'm saying, make something happen, bro. But let me know what y'all thoughts are. You feel me? Hope you guys enjoy my reaction, my commentary. Let me know down below other vids I should check out on the channel. Stay tuned for the next one, y'all.